rewarded. And I guess I'll just start now. Congratulations, all you guys. We are finally done with high school. A lot of us made it through what we would consider a normal high school career with friends, hard classes, the occasional blow-off class, games, dances, and more. Oh, and don't forget the global pandemic we made it through and everything that it brought with it. But to some of us, high school was anything but normal. My freshman, sophomore, and junior year were pretty normal in my opinion. I was in honors and AP classes. I had a bunch of friends and I was in color guard with the marching band. Junior year was coming to an end and I ended up quitting color guard because I just got in the missions intern position at my church. Later that summer, I had 3 mission trips coming up. And if you guys know me, follow me on social media, or even have just spent a few minutes with me, you know that I have a passion for missions. I was so excited for these trips, and the first one that I went on that year was to LA. We served at a bunch of different places, but one night we went and hosted a youth group at a church called Oasis Hollywood. We all got to prepare a short little message or our testimony to share. And after service, I had this girl come up to me and we started talking, and she was telling me how she was going through some of the same things I was during that time. This was the night that God confirmed that calling of mine. But then throughout our entire trip, I was getting super lightheaded and was super tired the entire time. So tired that I would fall asleep almost immediately when we got into the car. At one point, we were all just making jokes of it because, it's kind of funny. You're working and as soon as you get into the car, you fall asleep. But this was happening on my other 2 trips that year as well. And do you know how gross it is to fall asleep on the subway in New York? I don't recommend it at all. So fast forward to the end of the summer, and we had just started our senior year, and I was super excited because, who wouldn't be? This is our last year of high school, and we finally get to get out of here. But little did I know, my senior year was going to be nothing like I expected it to be. August 25th was just a normal Wednesday, I thought. I went to class, went out to lunch with friends, and then after school, I went up to church to help set up for youth. Service started and worship was going, and I was in the back of the auditorium worshiping, and I started feeling weird. All of a sudden, I started having tunnel vision and couldn't stand back up. My mom helped me to a chair, and we had to sit there for the rest of worship. After, I felt like I could go sit back with my friends because I was feeling a little bit off, but a little bit better also. When it was time, after service was over, it was time to go to our small groups. I stood up, but immediately had to lay back down on the chairs. I ended up passing out from it. My parents, my pastors, and then some doctors and nurses that we had up at the church were all trying to help me, but nothing was working. My dad and one of their friends had ended up having to carry me to my car, and my mom was going to drive me to the hospital. The sheriff that was working there that night stopped us and said it wasn't safe to drive me in this condition. So, cue my first ambulance ride. Months passed, and too many specialists and doctors' appointments to count, I was officially diagnosed with POTS, which is short for post-stromal orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Basically what that is I get exhausted super easily. My heart rate will skyrocket to almost 200 just by standing up. And my blood pressure will drop super low, causing me to pass out. I would have days where I would be throwing up constantly, or some days I won't even have function of my legs or my arms. I was so mad at God, especially the first time that I had to go out in public in my wheelchair because I couldn't physically walk. I was yelling at God because I didn't understand how He could put the calling of missions on my life, but then let me have all these health problems also. I didn't know how I was going to make it on the rest of the trips that I had. A few months later in March, this year, we had our first trip, and I just started a new medicine, and I didn't know how it was going to affect my body, so I was kind of nervous for this trip. The morning that we were leaving came, and my parents prayed over me right before we left. We got to LA, and throughout the entire week, I had no issues with my health. I never got lightheaded, I didn't get dizzy, I didn't pass out, or anything else that had been happening recently. I know I'm not fully healed yet, but between prayer, neurofeedback, medications, and lots of salt, I am managing and know that my healing is coming. But even though I'm not fully healed, I'm not going to let POTS or anything else stop me from what God has called me to do. Jeremiah 29:11 says, Go therefore, nope, that's the wrong verse. Jeremiah 29:11 says, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. I fully believe that if God puts a calling on your life, He is going to use you in that calling. No matter what this world or what Satan throws at you, God will still use you in the way that He intended to use you. There is nothing that can stop God from using you to grow His kingdom. So no matter what your high school years look like, whether they turned out how you wanted them to or not, no matter what happens in the next years to come, God can still use you in the way He intended. So, as we start this new chapter of our lives, let me encourage you to not get discouraged if it doesn't look exactly like you thought it would. Look to God and let Him guide you through it. You'll be surprised at just how much He will use you and has planned for you.